Hello, happy Thoughtfully Fit Thursday. It's Darcy Luma, and I'm here today with a friend, a coach, a trainer, and just an amazing woman who I've had the privilege to get to know over the years. And Sarah Young is an author. She's a businesswoman. She's an entrepreneur and somebody who I respect greatly. So, Sarah, thank you so much for joining me today and our Thoughtfully Fit fans. And I'm wondering if you can just kick it off. Tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Thanks, Darcy, and thanks so much for having me. I know I've said this to you before, but I just feel like you're such a model of pure class and high quality in our shared industry. So really happy to be here with you. So thank you. And yeah, so my company is called Zing Collaborative, and I started it in 2013. My background prior to that was in the corporate world. So when I was in the corporate world, I got really passionate about supporting people on their journeys to make an impact in a way that feels aligned with what they care deeply about and their strengths and the kind of contribution that they want to make. And I also got really passionate about supporting leaders to be better leaders and managers when they were promoted to that role after being an individual contributor. So that was my background prior to starting Zing Collaborative, and did that in 2013. So have been doing that ever since, and working with primarily teams and organizations, and in some capacities, individuals and small groups in that space of leadership development and personal development.
Which is so fascinating because I don't think until this moment, Sarah, I realized we both started. I started my business and left like the safety and security and stability of a regular job in 2013 as well. And I think this is the first time I just realized that we started in the same year.
Yes, and I think did you start in January of 13? I remember calling you when I was on my journey. I was sitting in the parking lot of the train depot in Madison because I was between meetings, and I remember having a beautiful conversation with you in, it was probably like May or summer of 2013. But I think, yeah, you had just started your business full time in January that same year.
That is awesome.
Hmm.
So here we are. And so next year, I think we need to set on the calendar some kind of a fun 10-year anniversary
I
celebration,
love that idea.
because for most businesses, they don't make it after 2 years. The majority of
Mm,
businesses fail. So
yep,
this is tremendous to be in this space with you. And
likewise.
there are so many directions we could take this conversation. And the thought that my team and I had in bringing you on today is to really look at workplace joy. You deal with a lot of leaders and you work with teams. And given COVID and the chaos in the world and the great resignation, there's so much stress in the workplace. And so we thought we'd look at an angle from how do you find joy and fulfillment in the workplace. And because I see that in you. It's one of the things that
Mm,
when I'm looking and reading your Friday emails, which I get every Friday and love,
mm.
reading your book, seeing you speak, we've shared the same stage, that is something that I admire about you. And so I'm wondering
Mm.
first if you could just talk about it from a personal lens. Does that just who you are, or do you actually work and prioritize joy?
Thanks for saying that, and thank you for that beautiful reflection. It's funny, it's not always something I see in myself, so thank you for that. I was thinking about that in preparation for our conversation today, and what feels true for me is I think my essence has always been very connected to joy. So when I think back to when I was really, really, really young, I mean, I think that's true with most kiddos, but that was a part of who I was. And I think about when I was in school, joy was definitely a part of who I was and how I like to operate. I remember adding little pops of joy into different things like through high school sports and playing, like we would play little like uh, joyful pranks on our coach and that kind of thing. So joy was very much, I think, has been part of my core essence. But I think what happened, and I'm curious if you had this experience working in the context that you did before starting your business as well, is I think I at times became disconnected from that. And for me, the way that that has shown up is coming into this place of grinding and um, productivity is the sole marker of impact. And I think also I've uncovered over the years that there's perhaps a saboteur that I have within me, which is that things have to be hard. So, working hard and grinding hard and like doing a really good job in a way that is hard work. So those are some things that I definitely have become aware of in myself, particularly in my adult life. That I'm really trying to continue to try to find that sweet spot around honoring that place of joy and ease and flow, and also working hard and having a meaningful impact, but coming from that place of joy. So I would say it's been a mix, and it's a continuous practice to find that kind of middle ground.
I'm so relating to what you're saying. I grew up in a family, Minnesota, Lutheran, Finnish, Midwestern work ethic. Like you play when the work is done.
Exactly.
And the work is never done. And so I've struggled to prioritize. As a matter of fact, last year it was my intention was playfulness. For the first time in my life. I actually even gave myself permission because I had that mindset of also like you need to work hard. And so I think that's a barrier to joy. And I'm wondering, when you reflect on your clients that you work with, are there other barriers that you're seeing that get in the way of having joy in the workplace?
Mm. Gosh, I'm curious what you think about this too. I feel like right now there are so many. I mean, I think at this moment in time, the whole idea of, that article went viral about surge capacity being depleted. I feel like that is so present right now, and the idea of languishing, that people have just been working so hard to move through the muck for so long now, and people are tired and they are fatigued. And so in this moment in time, I'm finding that just the collective stress of the last couple of years is definitely a barrier to workplace joy. I'm also finding that people are holding so much right now in terms of what's happening in their personal life outside of work, that a lot of those challenges and stresses are being brought into the workplace. And with everyone, not everyone, with many people sort of on edge or just totally maxed out, people are interacting from that place. So, I've heard a lot of clients share with me that just they're not as patient as they typically would be. Or I had a few people share over the last couple of months that they've actually had some pretty tense moments at work where people um, interacted with each other in a way that they wouldn't typically interact. And I think it's just this idea that people are really maxed out. So that's what I'm seeing in this particular moment. I think, more broadly speaking, one thing that I observe is I think there's an individual and there's a collective part of this. So individually, I feel like it can be easy to become disconnected to our joy if we're not clear that it's something we want to prioritize. So sort of like you're saying with your word from last year, and what I'm saying about finding this middle path, if we don't put a stake in the ground for joy, it's easy to just get swept away in the whirlwind of the busyness of every day, versus saying, I am going to prioritize this. And even in really hard situations, I want to come from a place of joy. So I think putting that stake in the ground and really intentionally doing that can be useful. Other barriers to workplace joy, I think this idea of psychological safety and what's happening at the macro level of an organization. It's pretty dang hard to feel joyful if we don't feel safe at work. And it's pretty hard to feel joy if we're surrounded by people who might be exhibiting toxic behaviors, and if that behavior is tolerated or maybe even perpetuated. So my observation is that there are these individual pieces of in terms of the barriers of workplace joy, but then there are also kind of contextual or macro level pieces to the puzzle as well. What are you seeing with your groups that you're working with?
Yeah, it's well stated. I think what I'm hearing, it's like there's times when we get in our own way internally, our mindset, our beliefs,
Hmm.
we're not prioritizing it, we're not saying no, we're not giving ourselves permission to hold that value of joy. And then
Hmm.
externally with others, the policies, the procedures, the bosses, the environment can zap the workplace joy. It's funny. I was smiling as you were talking because last weekend it was Saturday morning and I got up and my daughters were up and one of them was reading. She
Hmm.
reads voraciously.
Wow. Amazing.
And the other was on social media. She's on social media voraciously. and,
Mm-hmm.
and so I got up and I came down, I'm like, okay, girls, so here's what I'm thinking. And I start, rattling off all the things that we should be doing, and we're moving. And so I'm like, how about da. And Jaden looked at me and she's like, Mom, we don't always need to be productive.
Oh, wow.
And it was like, whoa, oh my gosh, we don't always need to be productive. And at that moment, I had like a little bit of a sting with the truth of that. And then a little bit of disappointment, like, well, yes, we do.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then a little bit of joy, like, oh my God, I've broken the cycle of generations of Lomas who have like work, no joy, that my daughters are finding joy. So I think that mindset that they challenged me on, what I'm hearing from you also is can show up in the workplace.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's so interesting. Like I love that story, and your daughters, they just seem so awesome. And the expression of that I see a lot is the just back to back to back to back to back meetings all day long. So the equivalent of that in the workplace of we are being impactful if we are productive, and to be productive we are in meetings all day. So I call it tiny boxes on the calendar, where it's like that's our day. And I it's very hard. We can, I'm seeing a lot of teams do all these things, right? Where they have like, the Slack add-on where there's water cooler talk and different things to find joy. And there's, a Zoom happy hour and all these things. But being in meetings from 7:30 in the morning until 5:30 at night without time to go to the bathroom or grab something to eat is not joyful. And so I do think that there is an opportunity to look at exactly what you're saying, that way in which we sometimes conflate productivity with impact. And from a team perspective or within an organization, to really look at, are we unintentionally doing that by the way that we're scheduling our days, and how could we possibly start to unravel that so that we can give people a little bit of space to breathe or think or have an idea emerge.
And one of the things that comes up for me as you're talking is this, notion of being able to say no, to set boundaries, to protect your time. And yet, in the workplace, I think for many people that's challenging, if indeed the culture is productivity, and if there is something like, Sarah's got this time open, I'm gonna fill it. I'm gonna put a meeting in there. And to me, it seems like that's a real challenge for employees to figure out the balance of being present to all of the meetings and to the team and to everything, and yet also being able to say no, to carve out time to think, to be strategic, to be innovative, to work so that you do have some balance, and you're not like, oh, I'm in meetings all day, and then at 5:00, that's when I do my emails
Exactly.
and reports and stuff.
Exactly. Yeah, I was cracking up a little bit as I was reading the newsletter that Jill from your team had written about saying no, and I was laughing and sort of internally laughing and crying at the same time when I was reading the section that she wrote about how she used to just put fake meetings on her calendar with fake people, because that was the only way that people wouldn't schedule over that time. And I was thinking, that's a great creative solution. And also, how sad is it that in our current in our world, that just saying planning for a project or working on top 3 priorities, that's not good enough. You have to make up a fictitious meeting with some fictitious person for it not to get scheduled over. So I think you're absolutely right. And my observation is that this is really hard to unravel, particularly if the culture of the organization is a very meeting heavy culture. And then in today's world too, when a lot of people are working remotely more than they have been in the past, things that might have been an office stop by in the past are now a scheduled meeting on the calendar. So I'm finding this to be very complicated to try to shift. But a few things that I'm seeing work well are the organization and the leaders within the organization putting a stake in the ground to say, this is something we want to prioritize, and we're going to find a structural way to do it. So one of the groups that I work with, they just implemented a structure where I think they're doing it every quarter. They're blocking off a couple of days, which are for white space and thinking and connection and some of these higher level things. I think that's amazing. I've seen some groups do like no meeting segments where it's a morning a week or a block on a certain day or whatever it is. And I think if it's really upheld and if it's really honored by the leaders in the organization, that can be extremely useful. So I think, culturally, it can be helpful to have support for that, at the highest level, within the leadership team. On an individual level, something that I've seen help people who are trying to manage this on their own calendars is really thinking about for each meeting that we have on our calendar. I keep coming back to this idea of stake in the ground, but what is my stake in the ground and what is the specific impact that I feel I can make in this meeting? Why am I here? What is being asked of me? One of my clients used to ask the question, what am I trying to influence in this meeting? And if we can't answer those questions, to one, raise them and have a discussion about it. But if nobody knows, maybe that's a meeting that we can opt out of. And then I'm also seeing some pretty good success with looking at structure. So I know, at least in my past life, every meeting was either an hour or 30 minutes because that's what the default is on the calendar, right? And can we change those defaults? Can we do 20 minutes instead of 30? Can we do 45 instead of 60? What could that look like?
I love your dog. Oh, who is it? Tell me. He's barking. Yeah, I'll wait. So I love that creativity and that you're talking about with calendaring. And I'm going to say one more thing because I'm guessing the mail person is there. I got on a call yesterday with a client. She went to Cancun. She just got back and I said, how was it? And she was just exhausted. She's like, oh, and I knew she was working while she was there because I got some emails from her. And she said, Darcy, it was fine, but I just feel like I didn't recharge. And now I've got all these emails and because she didn't really say no or set boundaries while she was gone. And when the girls and I were in Italy a couple summers ago with a friend from Germany and his family, he's a high level attorney in Germany. He got to this villa in Italy and turned off his phone. And for the entire, 10 days we were there, he didn't work. I mean, I'm not kidding. He didn't work.
Yep.
And so I saw a meme recently that had Europeans out of office, and it says, "Hey, I'm taking a sabbatical, for the summer. I'll return your message in September." And then the Americans out of office is, "Hey, I'm taking 2 hours to go have surgery, but I'll be checking my email as soon as I get out. Here's my cell phone if it's an emergency."
That is so accurate. Oh my gosh. One of my dear, dear, dear friends, she had a few years ago, she had sent me follow-ups from the hospital as she was going into labor. And I was like, you are amazing, but you do not need to send me follow-ups as you're going into labor. Like, I'm pretty sure that these follow-ups can wait until, after the baby arrives and after you're able to rest. That meme is so spot on. And I think you're absolutely right that this compulsion that we have sometimes to be plugged in and to respond. And I love that example about not working too, because I had a client recently that did something similar where she went on vacation, same thing. She turned off everything and she only used her phone to check in with her kiddos who were back home with a sitter. And the difference in her energy when she came back, she was like, I'm great. Like, everything's amazing. And it really did just totally recharge her and totally shift her energy. So I love that example. And I start to wonder, like, what would need to be possible for more of us to be able to embrace a little bit of that European vacation spirit.
And I think it does go back to your point earlier. There's like an internal obstacle and an external. So internally, putting your stake in the ground. I'm unplugging. If it's an emergency, you can text me. I'm not checking email. I'm not responding to emails. Here's somebody who can handle right. So that internally and then externally setting those boundaries with others, that here's when it's okay to reach out and
yes,
here's when it's not.
Yes. Absolutely. And, I know you and I talk a lot about this idea of design and setting things up front. I think your example is so powerful. Like, I'm not going to be checking, but if you need me, here's how you can get a hold of me. If you really need me and really need me means these three things.
Yes.
And, I think as a leader or a colleague or whatever it is, it's actually more work to do that, to set it up intentionally up front, to have the conversation, to put the guidelines in place, to kind of put a workflow and a process in place versus just constantly checking. But I feel like it's so much more empowering and freeing for everyone if we maybe take that step back and do that first.
And it's a little bit of go slow to go fast. It might take more
Absolutely.
time and energy and work on the front end, but it pays off on the back end. Okay, so
Absolutely.
you have to tell me who your coworker is.
My coworker? Oh, my dog?
Yeah.
Oh, Duke, he someone definitely came to the door, which as you
Duke?
noticed, he he's very mindful if anyone knocks on the door. So yeah, Duke.
Okay, I love that. So Duke has made, I think, some debut appearances in the expansive impact pets world. So I'm
Yes,
going to
yes.
use this opportunity to transition. And before we close out this conversation, I'd love to hear. It's so interesting that we started our businesses in the same year, and we
Yes.
both published a book in the same year.
Yeah, did yours come out in
June.
it was the same year again? Oh, it's almost the same. That's so
That's crazy.
interesting. It's almost the same, sort of amount of time too.
Timeline.
That's wild. Wow. That's
Yeah, so
cool.
you better watch whatever I do big next. Like if I
Yeah.
jump into something, like you're 6 months behind me. So
Yeah. That's so
well,
wild.
tell me about expansive impact. I'm halfway through, and I mean I'm loving it. I'm loving the research. I'm loving the vulnerability. I'm loving the stories. Um, what sparked you to write that at this point in your life, and what's it about?
Yeah, thanks for asking. So really it was just I felt like I had created all of this content over the years and I had been working on, formulating some thoughts about what do I think about these things and what does leadership mean to me and what is my approach. And that was a culmination of all these things that I had done over all these years in terms of working with clients and, being in the corporate world and coaching circles and all of these things. And I had all this stuff and it was just all sitting in my Google Drive. And I was always referring to it as my 999 tragedies. So I had all this stuff that it was really just dying a slow digital death in my Google Drive. And it seemed kind of sad because one of my core my core pillars of my business is impact. And, obviously there's no impact being had by these documents that are dying away in the digital archive. So that was really the core driver was how can I take some of these ideas and take some of these things that I've developed over the years and hopefully bring it together in a way that could be a little bit more useful to at least one person or a couple people if they were to pick up the book. So that was the core driver behind it. And it walks people through six invitations of expansive impact. And it's really all about how do we show up and lead in the moments, and as leaders how can we increase our positive impact even if nothing around us changes. So what are those things that we can do, and create in the moments at hand. So that's kind of the spirit of the book. And you mentioned the word vulnerability, and I'm curious if you experienced this when your book came out. So the book has been out for pre-order for a few months now, and the official publication date was just this last Tuesday, our shared birthday week. So I am noticing with the official publication week that the whole vulnerability hangover thing is really hitting me hard this week, and the realization that this is now a printed book and it is physical, and you can't just go online and change something that you don't like. It is out there and it's printed, and uh there are no takebacks. And so I'm wondering, the vulnerability thing, vulnerability hangover is like has been very intense this week. So I'm wondering, did you experience that after your book came out into
That's
the world?
so interesting. I'm surprised that I didn't
Mm,
experience that when you're saying it. What I did experience was leading up to it when I would share things and then like, oh, I overshared. And so I think because it took me a long time to write my book and to have the courage to put it out there, I think I figured out like what are the boundaries of where I feel comfortable or safe and
yep.
sort of stay within those, A, and then B, I got just a little bit more comfortable. Like, this is me.
Yep.
There's some really horrible stuff in this book. I had a really horrible thing happen when my life
Yep.
blew up, and I don't have to be ashamed of it or hide it. So there's some probably inner work that I did too. Um, I guess I'm surprised that I haven't thought about that because I've had
Mm.
vulnerability hangovers for sure, but didn't have it with the book.
That's amazing. And I love what you said too about, this is me and this is what happened. And that's something I've really been trying to lead into as well. There's a quote that I actually include in the book from Rhea Elias, and the quote is, "The truth has legs." And for me, similarly, there were some things from my own leadership journey that I felt really ashamed of because I felt like I didn't handle them how I should have, and I wish I could go back and do it over. And for a number of years, I was so ashamed of how I had handled the thing that I didn't even want to talk about it or think about it. I just wanted to like forget that it happened. And there were a couple of those that I write about in the book. And I do think it's uh, complicated to move through those feelings, but coming out on the other side and, like you said, just sharing the truth and standing in the truth, and this is what happened and this is what I learned, and here's what we can create from it is powerful, even if a bit yeah,
Gary.
even if it's inducing all the feelings for me currently.
Yes, yes, yes. I know all those feelings. And
Mhm.
and to me, you're really grounding this so beautifully. We always try to think about which practice of thoughtfully
Yeah,
fit our conversations, and this is all about strength, like consciously choosing how you show up,
absolutely.
regardless of what life throws at you. Um, and it's a beautiful book that you have written, and probably if it's any consolation, not to minimize your feelings and your experience, because I get it, that to me is what makes the book so powerful. The things that are probably making you feel like, oh gosh, I can't believe I put that in writing, it's out there, those are exactly the things that make it so amazing to read, because you
Mm,
didn't sort of like play it safe or hide the truth. You just really shared fully, and it
mm,
makes it a good read.
thank you for saying that, and I totally feel similarly about your book, so, yeah, thank you for those words.
Well, thank you. So we end every episode with two things. One is just grounding this and engaging your thoughtfully fit core. So you're an athlete, you're a triathlete, you're an Iron Woman. I think what we'll leave today with is just reminding people that if you are not in a place right now in your life that has joy, or if you're not finding joy in the workplace, to hit the pause button and give yourself permission to think, what's the stake I want to put in the ground? And how can I have the strength, and how can I set boundaries to do that? And then take one small action today, moving yourself further. And that action might even just be giving yourself permission to explore a new perspective, that you don't have to just have that work hard and no play. So
Mhm.
Sarah, with that, I'd love to invite you to share, where can people find more?
Thank you, Darcy, and love that takeaway. And for some of my clients and colleagues, that little spark of joy might be so simple. It might be putting on a good song in the morning, or putting on a favorite shirt, or whatever it is. So it can be really small. So thank you for that. And most of my stuff all lives at my website, which is zingcollaborative.com. And over there's the link here to Friday Favorites, which is the newsletter that I send out each week on Friday mornings. And
Which is
yeah,
really good. It's full
thank
of
you.
great information. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, so that's a great place to connect. That's sort of my primary way of staying in conversation with my community. And then, yeah, the book is at the same website, but just different link, which is there's more info on the book, and there is there are some links there too for some additional resources and goodies that kind of go along with the physical book. So those are great places to connect. So thank you for asking.
Yeah, that's perfect. And congratulations. I was so excited that you carved out some time on your calendar to be here today, the week that your book is launching and being birthed into the world in your birthday week. It is a tremendous milestone and accomplishment. And I'm excited to just continue to support each other in our journey of the joys and the struggles and the challenges. And I thank you for what you put out into the world to create expansive impact.
Thank you so much, Darcy, and always a pleasure to talk with you. Super grateful to be here with you and with your community today. And yeah, so fun to learn about these little serendipitous aspects of our timing and our journey. So grateful to be on the path with you and excited for whatever might unfold for both of us as we look ahead to the months and years in the future.
Awesome. Let's keep doing this.
Yeah, I love it.
Wonderful. Happy Fatfully Fit Thursday, everybody. We will see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.